All right. Well, good seeing everybody. So what's been going on? What's happening in everybody's world right now? Everybody been well? Anything on the pipeline right now? I've spoken, I feel like, with everybody that's on right now, like at least within the last week. Sounds like things are moving, which is great.
Yeah, definitely. I actually went and walked the property today.
Tell us about it.
So it's about a 25,000 square foot building. The the seller was not planning on selling it or not. Yeah, correct. He wasn't planning on selling it, but he had some family issues, stuff like that. Realizes he needs to sell it here pretty quick. And in that time, he's got somebody that wants to lease it as well. So got a lease actually right here that the agent gave me. So just been looking over
Sunny?
that all today.
Is that from Sunny?
No. This was from a totally different broker.
Awesome. Awesome. Things are moving, man. That's great.
It is, and this lease is actually supposed to commence actually in like 4 or 5 days. So I got to get with the broker and everything like that because I would like to negotiate a couple of these terms that they got on here. So
That's awesome. Sounds like things are definitely trending that right direction, dude. That's great news.
yep.
What else is everybody working on? That's great. I spoke with Grant last week. I spoke with Brett last week. I mean, it's awesome when everybody is just moving the ball down the field. This is great news. It's awesome.
Yeah. Hey, Nolan, guys, from my side, just working through getting listing agents to send me their listings for what they have in their, let's say, portfolios. Had a couple things that I've talked with you, Nolan, about that maybe are a little bit promising, but maybe not so much. So just working through that, looking at deals and what makes sense to move forward with. So making some progress, but just learning. Obviously, it's my third week, in the group. So just continuing to learn and continuing to progress forward through the different steps. So thanks.
Well, that's awesome. And one of the keys out of the gate is when someone first signs up, I feel like it can be really overwhelming because there's so much information. There's I was talking to Lee last week, or actually yesterday. I don't know if he's on here or not yet, but there's probably 100+ hours of just content just on school, which feels incredibly overwhelming. So know that like it doesn't happen overnight. We're just going to keep moving the ball down the field every day. But that's one thing I wanted to mention is, every week when y'all get on the calls with Zane and we work over what we did last week, our goals for this week, everything like that. What we're going to hopefully have finished and completed by next week is during your 8-week boot camp, when you sign in, you will you'll have an agenda for every week with Zane. You'll have a key takeaways of what the goal is of this, whatever your meeting is with Zane. You'll have what the most important piece is. We're going to go over all the things that you need to be, learning this coming week. And then we're even going to put some homework on there talking about and what we'll do is we'll have videos on school so you can follow along. So week 1, this is what, and you'll have homework. Okay. So you find all these metrics and I will just work all the way down to where by the time it's week 8, you will have submitted 10 letters of intents. You will have hopefully 2 buildings under contract. And as long as you follow along and stay on task, it's impossible for you to fail. It is totally impossible. So that's what Zane and I have been just grinding on, is to give you guys even better direction, more information, more input, just and easier ways to, bite off, or to eat the elephant by one bite at a time. So I'm really pumped about it. Zane, do you want to mention anything about that? Do you have a thought on that? Zane's
No,
on.
yeah, I mean it's basically just going to be a much clearer path to get from A to Z. Because I know we have the acquisition blueprint, but I think it's important for us to specifically, especially when you're first starting, to just simply focus on everything on that 8-week boot camp that you guys have, which is just basically 3 things: just building the relationship with the brokers, underwriting deals and providing feedback, and then making offers on deals. And those three things I think are the most important things when you're just starting out and when you're trying to get deal flow and you're trying to actually get a deal on a contract. I think it's extremely important to have a clear path, more clear than what we have laid out for you right now, to where it's very easy and simple for you to go and say, how do I talk to brokers? How do I underwrite a deal and provide feedback? And how do I go and make a great offer on a building, basically?
So one thing that I wanted to mention as well, and then we can start getting into some questions or thoughts or underwriting anyone's deals that they're working on right now. Let me, I'm going to share my screen real quick here. So we got our blueprint pulled up. Okay. Making sure everyone can see this. So Zan and I were talking about this morning. I want to be like very, very clear on this. I think this is a really important thing because, you know, I've got some feedback from y'all and the response is like, hey, when we've got these must-have metrics on phase one and you know, step number 10, you know, got to have the debt service ratio, cap rate, cash on cash. It has, you know, these top three things. When we're looking at property, let's not even think the most important piece is we're not worried about what the math says because the offer, what that person is listing a building for is irrelevant. What we need to be focusing on is these 5 pieces right here. We got to find the lease that's got 3 years left, 10 to 40,000 square feet, 16 to 18 foot ceiling heights, 2+ roll-up doors, and less than a mile off the highway. The reason being is if we focus on these 5 pieces, then it doesn't matter what, then you have an actual opportunity. Because then it's like if the building is worth $1 million when you have a debt ratio of 1.4, a cap rate of 10+, and a cash on cash return of 10%, and it's worth on paper $1 million, but they're asking $1.5 million, well then you can offer $1 million because it checks these 5 building metrics. Like you can engineer your way into a debt ratio, into a cap rate, into a cash on cash return. But we can't reverse engineer ourselves into the actual structure of the building. So when y'all are out looking for property or you are, because like I said, you know, brokers be like, oh, wait, you're asking for all this stuff. Oh, this is a unicorn. This is impossible to find or whatever. The lease, the square footage, the ceiling heights, the roll-up doors, and how close it is to the highway, those are not impossible to find. Those things are out there. These are not uncommon buildings. And so if we focus on these 5 pieces, and those are the buildings that we're looking for, we send those metrics, not so much about the price doesn't matter. None of that, the offering price doesn't matter. The rent doesn't matter. All that matters is finding a space that actually checks these 5 boxes. And then we reverse engineer ourselves into making the actual math make sense. And then we submit letters of intent based on like the numbers and the metrics that matter to us. Because at that point, then we'll get all 8 boxes. We'll check every single box. Does that make sense to everybody? Does anyone have a thought or question on that? On how the importance of focusing on the actual building, finding the right space, and then reverse and backing ourselves into the actual amount of money to make an offer on that property. Does that make sense to everyone?
It's
Very
funny you
clear.
mention that. What's up, guys? Eric here. First call. I was talking to brokers today, and the word unicorn came up, which I find is hilarious. You just addressed that just now. And then 2, I was literally going to ask you, and you kind of addressed it there. I was playing around with a property in the pro forma, and there's a triple net in place already. And this property had been sitting for like 2 months, and they're asking like $2.5 million on it. And I was like, none of the numbers in underwriting check out. It's negative cash flow. And so I was like, even the other factors are there. Is it still a good opportune deal? Because we can always offer less.
Yeah.
And I just, even though it was an occupied building, I threw it in the 70% offer kind of metric to see what that would do. And the 70% buy price actually did make sense. It was positive cash flow. So I was like, maybe it is just a nature of, you know, offering less money for that same property. Then the wheels start turning on the actual numbers of the deal itself.
Yeah. No, nailed it. And then I want to get everyone else's opinion too, but I say it all the time, but there's 3 things you have to have a really good deal. You have to have motivation, you got to have a timeline, and you have to have something wrong with the property. Motivation, I would say from the seller is probably 50% of those 3 and its weight. if someone is offering a building out there, I had a call with a guy yesterday. He sent me some 60,000 square foot warehouse that's in like Virginia or something. And I looked at it and I was like, okay, he's like, he guy's like, yeah, he's really motivated. He's looking to sell it at like a 7 cap rate. And I'm like, there's no motivation there. Some guy that when debt is a loan constant is 9.5% or interest rates 8% and the loan constant's 9.5%, and he's trying to offer something at a 7 cap, those buildings, he's not motivated. And so, like you said, if some guy, that building's been on the market for X amount of months and there's no prospective buyers, it's probably because the building is shockingly overpriced. And some guy's asking to, that guy's looking for 1031 money, or he's got to have some REIT pick it up that just needs to deploy cash. Other than that, those you got to buy the building at the numbers that make sense to you. Does anybody, but that's awesome. I appreciate you saying that, Erica, because it's so true. When you run the numbers and you back yourself into it, you can make the numbers work. And most importantly, if you show to them, hey, I need the deal way less than he does, I'll make an offer at the price that makes sense to me. And if he's like, oh, no, you're crazy, well, then okay, go find somebody else. Go put an offer on something else on your terms. Because when you find a building that makes sense to you in your math, the money will just, eventually you're going to run into somebody that's divorcing, that's dying. They need to cash out, and you're going to be in a spot to take that deal down because you've already checked these other 5 boxes. So awesome, man. Who else had a thought? I wanted to get everyone's opinion here that wanted to say something on just making sure that we find these 5 metrics of the actual building before we go and focus on actually reverse engineering into purchasing the properties. Anybody else have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree too.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I agree too, because it's either seller motivation issue for me, or it has no lease at all in it, or a month-to-month lease.
And if you got a month-to-month lease, or you've got a, like I said, for this guy, like that's a perfect example. Some guy's offering it at a 7.5 cap rate, and this lease ends in like less than a year. So basically, you're getting a guy that thinks his building is worth all this money, when in reality, as we all know, any commercial building that doesn't have a lease or it's not tenanted, it's not worth very much. It's just worth the land and then the building content. That's all it is. So when you see a building that is either vacant or it's the lease is getting pretty short, that's where, in my opinion, we start running the numbers out on the 70% calculator and make an offer, because we can offer all day long as the numbers make sense to us. Because then think about it. Like if we buy a building that hits all these other boxes, we're going to have every one of our limited partner, our network of champions, is going to want to invest, because it's going to be a home run deal. And especially if it's a 3-year lease, if it's already occupied, we know we're going to have predictable cash flow into the future. So in my opinion, these 5 pieces are more important when looking for property out of the gate. But then after we've discovered a building with these 5 metrics, that's when we flip to maybe like kind of phase 2-ish, or at least to the second level. And then we start reverse and backing ourselves into the purchase price based on the ratio, the cap rate, and the cash on cash. Does that make sense? Anyone else have an idea on that?
So I was gonna even add on to that. So the property that I was just telling you about, it's got all those things right there. But the most important part for this tenant is that he needs a railroad. And so this property backs right up to a railroad, and he's got a bay door, or he's got a garage door that backs right up to the railroad, because what he does for business is that he is a plumber, but they send off sink materials, toilets, and everything like that to the military. So they have to have a railroad. And so that was the biggest thing for him in order to lease this building. So
one thing you can do on that too, I looked at a building about a year ago, maybe a little less than a year ago. And one thing that you can do as well, especially if there's a roll-up door that backs up to that railroad, you can consider putting a spur off of that railroad where it'll come off the actual track and can back directly up to that roll-up door. And people will pay, especially if some guy that needs it, you can add another $2 a foot to that building just because of the convenience factor. So
wow, okay.
Have a guy, and I don't know what the quote is on that, and I really don't know if you need to, talk to the railroad company that owns that. But if you can find a way to put a spur off of that track, especially to a tenant that needs it, that convenience factor to him is going to go way up. And then you're going to wedge him in there. He's going to be so sticky as a tenant because of his convenience of that location and the fact that he does have a spur off the railroad. It increases the value like substantially.
Wow, I like that. I'll look into that for sure.
Yeah, something to think about. So yeah, guys, so that's kind of where, again, I wanted to, does anybody have other thoughts or questions? I don't want to move to the next piece or anything. But I wanted to just be like very clear as to like when we're, looking at properties, how important all these metrics are, but we can't kind of get to the second phase of the actual numbers until we actually find the right building. Is that fair to say?
Nolan, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, Cal, what's up, man? Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Like Eric, this is my first time on a call. I've been so busy. I was just started working, I guess, yesterday and today, making some calls. And a couple of things. I got off a call earlier with and I'm not far enough along in this is only my second week, so I'm not some of the terms you guys are using, I haven't even got to some of those yet in the classroom. So forgive me. This guy got off the phone and all the boxes were checked, except I did miss the lease, the triple net 3-year remaining. And it was funny because no sooner than I got off the phone, he texted me and asked me the question. So that was the one thing that I did miss. So that came back. Something I was going to ask is, I'm only in, let's see, you got the 2023 videos and I'm probably, I think on week 8, no, I'm on week 10
Yeah.
in those videos. And my question is, has anybody recorded any of these calls? Does anybody have any my calls are all recorded. So I'm thinking that it might be a good resource for, for
Calls
training
recorded. What
to
call?
recruiting call or assembling your team, calling out to these brokers, calling out to these leasing agents.
No, and it's Cal, it's actually hilarious that you just said that because I was talking with Zane about it this morning about because what we're going to do is we're going to have another one of these and it's going to just be the 8-week boot camp. And we're going to have every time I'm going to start doing calls to brokers and things, I'm just going to start recording everything that I do. And I mean, I'm going to put it all up there to where it's like, hey, if I'm actually having a conversation with the broker, I'll say, hey man, or he's got a building and you can and I'll record it so you can hear like the dialogue, you can hear the conversation and, I'll just start recording these things and posting them up there. Cause I feel like hearing the dialogue and the way that I'm speaking with my guys and the vocabulary that I use, you'll be able to pick up the inflections and how I, or if I'm speaking with my tenant or it's something that I feel like I haven't, thought about until Zane and I were talking about today. So that's something that we're also going to include is the dialogue and the conversation back and forth with brokers. And there's one video, and what I'm going to do as well as kind of time goes on is I'm going to have more of our my team actually on these live calls. So that way, like, I'll have my accountant on here. I'll have my attorney. I'll have a couple of my bankers on talking about how they underwrite risk and they evaluate debt, all that kind of stuff. That way, when you guys are on, you guys can ask direct questions to these guys that's on your mind and without feeling like, oh man, this is a stupid question or whatever. At least that way, this is more of like a quote unquote, like a safer space or whatever, but you can hear the conversation and the vocabulary that we're using. If that answered your question.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I was thinking that if anybody else, if any of the other team members had recording, capabilities, if they had a call that they thought might help the group, because I like my call today, I thought actually went pretty well. I mean, what happened was I made the call to one guy and I asked him the question, is this an asset class that you deal in at all? And he said, look, I'll be honest, we just do retail. And I said, well, I'm looking for a referral, man. If you can point me to somebody. He said, dude, I got the guy for you. He said, yeah, there's a guy that worked with us. He gave me the guy's name. I called the guy up and when he answered the phone, I thought it was kind of funny because he acted like he knew me. Then he told me, hey, so-and-so Jonathan had already texted me and told me you were calling. I said, okay, that was good.
That's awesome. But that's the lead in that
Uh,
you need, though. And that's kind of what we've been saying, how, like, quote unquote, it's not hard or it's not easy, but it's not hard either. Where the game is that, hey, I'm talking to one of your residential guys or your retail guy, and they say, hey, I'm not your guy, but I've got a guy in my office that I got to introduce you to. Then it's like, then you've got a referral at that point, and you've already, you're already on second base. That's a stand-up double,
Mhm.
battling at the plate just to get on base.
So one of the videos that really helped me, Grant, in one of the videos, I think it was probably like week 6 or 7, and I think Grant was in his second or third week, and he talked about the fake it till you make it, and just do it, don't get analysis paralysis. And I guess because of my background in the insurance business, we work off scripts so much that that's kind of where I was for a few days, and so that's kind of worth mentioning to anybody who's in say week 2 or 3 and you haven't started really pounding the phones. um yeah, you just got to start making calls. It's just one of those things. You just got to do it and start
100%.
getting your bumps and bruises.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And another piece is too, I was speaking with Lee yesterday, and I don't know if he's on here or not, but one thing that he said that I thought was really important for everybody is he's like, man, sometimes he's not a very outgoing guy, whatever. And he goes, I just realizing that when you're speaking with you, think about this for a second, guys. Like when you're speaking with the broker, or you feel like you are below that person, a commercial real estate broker, because you don't feel like like Cal said a minute ago, he doesn't know the ratios, he doesn't know the metrics and all these things, that you feel like you might be behind or underneath that other person. Or even if you're speaking to a banker, think about this. When you're going and sitting across, first of all, you're asking them to coffee or breakfast. Most of these guys are never going to say no to that because it's a new person in their network. But realize that you are the asset. You are the asset to them because you're the investor. At the end of the day, you actually are the ones that make the entire world go round. And without you, there's no money to lend. There's no insurance. There's no property to insure. There's no commissions to be paid. All of the world in a real estate transaction revolves around us in this group, the investor. And so when you go and ask a broker for lunch or to introduce yourself to another lender or whatever, just realize that the lender is looking at you as a teammate and as an asset. They're looking for someone safe to lend money to. A broker, imagine this for a second. Like, I'm thinking about if Eric, he's brand new, he's 2 weeks in or whatever, and we have a similar broker, which my guy is Sam Zoldock in Birmingham. And Sam has two options. He can spend his time turning over rocks for Eric, Adam, Thomas. He can look for those guys, or he can look for buildings that Nolan told him to look for because he knows he has a higher probability of closing with the guy that's done a deal before, right? Or the guy that has paid him commissions in the past. So the goal here is realizing that, like, when you're working with these guys, they want to work with you. Like, they're looking for new investors to partner with, and they're trying to find ways to earn commissions. So have the confidence and understand that, like, we are the ones that are making the world go round, not in an arrogant sense, but in a way of realizing that, like, without us as investors, us taking the risk to buy commercial real estate, there's no insurance, there's no property insurance, banking, there's no money to be lent. There's no commissions to be paid. There's no syndicate documents to be drawn up by an attorney. There's no cost segregation study to be done by an accountant. Like, think of all that, all the people that are working because you are the one that's taking the action. So, like, I'm not trying to be this like football coach, but just realize that, like, we are the ones that are making the world go, and have the confidence to make those calls, because without you, nothing works, nothing happens. You know what I'm saying? So just to be on that level with you there, Cal. Okay. Anybody else have kind of thoughts or questions? I wanted to kind of segue to something else.
Yeah, real
Yeah.
quick. So go ahead.
You?
Already asked questions.
All right. Have you gotten any like quotes recently on lending for a vacant commercial building, like with my situation, Nolan?
Like regarding yeah, all the time. It's like I need more information on what you're asking.
So do you think
I'll be honest, Eric, I look at like 50 deals a week. So I know the deal that you sent me. I'm trying to recalibrate my mind of what the sitch is. So give me the
16,000
quick background.
16,000 vacant, Bessemer, half a mile off the highway, 9,000 warehouse,
Nice.
two bays, or was it high bays, 2 roll-up garage doors, 3-phase power.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering if I needed to get bridge or like conventional, just like wondering like what's going to go on when I actually apply for financing.
Yeah. So let's just do this. Let's just do this together. So again, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go first. If everyone's, if you got your own onboarding folder, 70% calculator on that deal. You said 16,000 feet.
Yep, 16,154 feet.
154. Let's say the market cap rate. Let's just, let's call it 9.5. What do you think you can get in rent out there? What's your guy telling you to get in rent?
He's thinking we can get 725, but I'm putting 7 on the offering the investors.
All right.
Just so I can surprise him.
And what do you, well, that's not correct. 16,000. There we go. And then what do you think the rehab is? I mean, we'll just spit this thing out live.
So the office needs to be rehabbed, and that's probably going to be about, paint, carpet, trim, 30,000. And only problem is it might not be ADA compliant, so there may be an elevator that needs to go in there. So I don't know what you were thinking on what an elevator typically costs, but yeah,
you got to maintain it too.
Yeah.
Well, let's run the numbers off of what it is right now without the elevator. I feel like that's pretty fair. We don't have to get too cute. All right, so where are we on? Let's put this to 10%. I think that's better. What's your offer right now?
They're asking 1.375, which I know is irrelevant, but I was thinking offer 825.
And it's vacant?
Yeah, it's vacant. They're asking like I think that's what it'd be worth if it's fully leased.
Sure.
With like a couple of years on it. But I don't know. It's the Bessemer Industrial Development Board, so maybe they got nothing to lose.
It just goes back. It goes back to the way that I would be viewing this. It goes back to who needs the deal the least. I said that before. And I know, and it's one of those things too, where you get fired up because you think you got like a good opportunity here. When I hear a guy, now again, take this for what it's worth, asking, I'm seeing the value just as what it is. I mean, if he says he want 135, it's probably 7 cap. Let's see. I mean, literally 8.5. Yeah. Yeah, he's looking at trading it at an 8.5 cap rate on a vacant building. So, again, I'd say 10% cap rate just because that's one of our must-haves.
Yeah.
When it's vacant like this, I just it's no wonder it hadn't sold it. It's no wonder, right?
Yeah.
You can't buy something. These people can't expect to sell something on a property. And here's where you do this. We actually did this with, I think it was Jared. He made an offer. He made an offer on a building. I might even have this somewhere. But he made an offer and said, I'll make 2 offers on it. One was if I'll buy it at the price that you're asking or whatever it was, or he came up with like something close to that and said, but you have to go and rehab it and tenant the space and pay the leasing commissions. And then I'll buy it for the price that you're asking. Because at that point, he's done all the work for you. He's eliminated the risk, right?
Yeah.
Because there's risk when you're buying a vacant building because you don't have any income. Like if you're going to borrow money on this building and let's say that let's say you offered 800 grand and you borrowed 500 from somebody from the bank, there's debt to be serviced and you don't have any income on it. So there's risk on your part. So if you want to go back to that guy and say, hey man, awesome that you want that building for that price. I'll offer you 1 point whatever, but I'm not buying the building until you fix the property up, you lease the space for market rent, and the lease has to be X amount in length, and I have to approve it. you know, you can list out all of these, you know, must-haves in order for you to buy the property at that price. But at that point, the deal might make sense and you're not taking on all that risk. Does that make sense?
Okay. Well, I was thinking, if I could get an exit, an 8.5 cap and go in at like a 13 to 14 just because it's vacant, that's where I feel like, I mean, barring I have to put in an elevator, that's where I feel like the risk's worth it because I mean, there's a ton of comps in the area. I think these people are just hard to work with, and that's why they aren't getting leased up. Like there's buildings directly across the street that just leased up. So, and plus it's got
the motivation.
it's got red and yellow walls in there. It's just the office is ugly. It's got like black ceiling tiles that look like they're spray painted. Like it's no wonder.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's something I think you even shot me an email about that. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, to me, it doesn't sound like he's motivated. That's what
yeah, I
it
don't
sounds
think they
like.
are.
There's not a lot of motivation. And so I think that you just stick with your guns and say, hey, this is the math. This is why I'm making this offer. You know, maybe we're too far apart. But again, the fact is you made an offer on something and he might say, go kick rocks, but you can say, hey, dude, look at the math. And at that point, he'll have to sober up or it'll keep sitting there and it'll keep being a liability on their books if it's not producing income. It's costing them money, you know?
Yeah.
So something to think about it that way. Okay. I wanted to, not necessarily switch gears, but I wanted to show everybody, I sent on school. I want to make sure everybody got a chance to see this. Did y'all happen to see, this template? Did y'all get your eyes on this? Okay. So let me show you guys again, like, now this is a property that we just got under contract recently, but I wanted to walk through this with everybody and you guys can ask questions or whatever. And I can, of course, I think this is actually in everyone's folder too. But just basically showing you guys, like, submit proposal for financing to banks. Like this is such an awesome thing you can do because these guys, let me tell you something. I sent this to a banker up in Indiana on this one deal like this. And he called me about 20 minutes later and was legitimately like, I'll be honest, Nolan, I have literally never seen something like this, or I have not seen an informative proposal for financing in my career as a banker, right? Because the majority of people go and ask for a mortgage. They're saying, hey, would you lend me money? Would you lend me money? But obviously in this proposal for financing, the very first piece of this summary, if you read it from school, a mortgage is being offered. I'm offering something. I'm not asking for anything. I'm offering them the opportunity to lend money on a really, really cool opportunity, a really great building. Okay. So, again, we don't have to go over all of this stuff, but I wanted to show that how this looks, right? So you can get a feel for when you do have an opportunity, how always be building those relationships with those lenders. And when you submit something like this, nobody does this. Like nobody does this. And that's how you can be different. And so, and again, it's like, when I was telling guys, when I was, playing baseball and I was doing lessons with kids, everyone's like, how do you get to play at Arkansas? How do you become this baseball player or whatever? Because I was a white kid from Indiana and, I was like, how did you go play whatever, right? And I tell all these guys, I was like, when you go to a showcase and there's 500 guys there, your number on the back was like 430, right? How do you be different? I would be shagging batting practice. I'd be power shagging. I'd be like running balls down. I would just doing something that made me different and something that like made me stand out just a little bit to where then when it was my turn to go bat, they're like, oh yeah, who's this 430 guy, right? I at least stood out to them. And so what I'm saying is when you go and submit something like this to, a bunch of these lenders, they're going to look at you and be like, I have never seen this before. You're already automatically different. And that's what this is going to do. This is going to improve your, it's going to, in their eyes, you're going to look like so sophisticated, it'll be unbelievable. But it shows that you are trying to help them make a better decision in their lending, right? You're giving them all this information on who you are as the borrower. I mean, I put my own financial statements in there. I mean, the balance sheets and the profit and losses of the tenant, how I underwrote the deal on my spreadsheet. You know, I told them I would submit the actual purchase agreement once we're under contract, but I'd submit the letter of intent and all the information on it. But what I'm getting at is that, like, if we can start, you can start basically building the foundation with these guys right now. And even if it's a deal that you don't even do, like, maybe this deal falls apart. Who knows? It probably will. But what I'm saying is that if you are able to submit something like this, and especially when it's a template, and all you got to do is just change a couple like words in this thing and update your financial statement every 6 months, it just looks so strong and you just look so sophisticated. And I just want to like make sure that y'all understand that you can do this, even if it's a building that you're, whether you're buying it today or tomorrow, or it's not even you don't even have it under contract yet, but just doing something like this and submitting it to your banker, I'm telling you, it's going to be like, they're going to be like talking about you and to their lending, to the loan committee. I mean, it's remarkable. He called me 20 minutes later. He's like, I've never seen anything like this. I've never had somebody send something like this to me. So what I'm getting at is, I'm not saying that, look at me, but I'm saying that, like, we all have this. This is not that hard to like create. And you are now at the very tip top of the list when it comes to, a borrower, like the strength of a borrower and the risk of the borrower. You see what I'm saying? Does anybody have like a thought or a question kind of on that? Okay, cool. So that's kind of where, again, it's not like it's the only way to do things, but as we're building the relationships and we're assembling our team, like what I was mentioning is like kind of our main priority in the very beginning of our blueprint is assembling the team. Imagine if you're able to sit down with and one thing I'm going to do too, guys, is I'm going to create a one-pager for everyone that's when you're interviewing with brokers and you're interviewing with bankers, 10 questions that you need to be asking them so you can get a good gauge and you can sound sophisticated when you're speaking with them. So, but when you're speaking with these guys, imagine like you ask all these really great questions, you have good conversation, good dialogue. That very afternoon, you submit to them your financial statements, your tax returns, all your personal information as a borrower. And then you come over the top in a month later and you submit to them a proposal for financing. Like, in my opinion, that just shows so much professionalism, and they're going to go to bat for you. You're going to more likely than not get a term sheet. I would say that if your borrowing capability, let's say that you're younger and you're like, oh, I don't have the balance sheet myself. Well, then that's where, of course you can say, hey, well, we're going to syndicate this deal. We're going to bring other people on, but let me just show you the terms of the deal. And then it's just going to create so much less risk than somebody that would be, just some Joe Blow sending out a pro forma and saying, hey, can I borrow money from you? Does that make sense to everyone? Does everyone like see how like the difference? I'm offering them something versus, and I'm providing like all this information. They're going to look back and be like, damn, like this guy is like on it. He knows what he's doing. And again, banks are conservative by nature, and they need us, people like you and me, to go and find these deals. And so if they're going to lend me money or that person over their money, whoever is the least risky, that's who's going to get the loan, right? And so if we can show the bank, hey, this is a very, very de-risked deal because of X, Y, Z, and all the other information on this financing proposal, they're more likely not to be like, damn, this guy's good. Sounds awesome. Let's do the deal. You know what I mean? That's my 2 cents, I guess, on that. Thoughts, questions?
No, I like it. Well said.
All right. Well, we got 15 minutes left. I want to see, does anybody else have, what else is on everyone's mind? I want to, as we kind of keep going along these calls like this, like I told you before, when the very beginning of those when we first started, like when like, I mean, Grant is an OG. He was on our very first, one of our very first members, and like out of the gate, it was all about like, okay, how to underwrite, how to do this, how to do this. I'm all about going over all these things, but that's why I want to put all this on our acquisition or the 8-week boot camp, so you guys can, we'll do it with you and, you know, the coaching and everything. I want these, I think, to be kind of like maintenance calls. Like if someone's got like something on their mind, or they got a deal, like if I get on a call, like Grant and I spoke last week, he's got you know, an opportunity that he's looking at building it. He's got a great team that he's assembling. And Grant, I don't want to call you out, but would you mind like just kind of tell your situation? Like, is it Archer that your guy?
Oakley.
Oakley. Yeah. Can you kind of
Yeah.
give everybody like just kind of a breakdown of like how you've developed and worked this relationship and like what that's been like? Because everyone's kind of, as they're starting, they're in that finding the team. What's been your experience of like, you know, working with Oakley and figuring that out?
Well, I mean, you know, we landed there in terms of where we are now with Oakley, but I think, you know, that was probably after I've met and dealt with probably a dozen other brokers and just going kind of back and forth. But Oakley was younger, he came shot out of a cannon, and I think the biggest thing that I liked about him is I need to have someone that's willing to go and call on people, go knock on doors. And he's just hungry to make money. And that's how he works. He's a hustler. So right away, I found someone that I knew could be a real key part of the team. Where we struggled a little bit until more recently is he was a broker, also double dipping as a leasing agent, trying to do both. But I think, as we all know, like it's a compromise. If you're focused on finding deals, you can't be finding potential tenants or vice versa. So subsequently, we looked at a couple of things that didn't quite work through just because we weren't aligned on the same page. And I think he was multitasking. But I think what transpired is he signed on with a new company specifically around commercial industrial properties. And he's now just a leasing agent. So now he brought me into the fold with his broker looking at smaller properties under 3 million. And now we've sat down, we've had a number of touch points. They understand exactly what my blueprint is for deals. We're all on the same page. We're all hungry. And now we've got 3 deals that we're trying to line up and go. But I just think it's a lot of back and forth. And I think you have to all be on the same page. And I think, you know, the acquisition blueprint was probably one of the key things that helped us all align, because they knew what to go look for. And specifically, like you called out, those 5 pieces, I'm like, these are the criteria I'm looking at. The numbers, we'll make those work down the road, but this is what we need to be looking at. And then from there, we'll make deals, we'll make offers, and we'll see if we can sync something. But I think that alignment piece, I think, got us all on the same page. And all of a sudden, I think things are moving. So I don't know if there's anything else you're thinking.
No, that's great. That's great. I think it's, I don't want to ever come across when we're going, we want to just keep moving the ball down the field, but realize too that nothing is going to happen overnight, right? Like playing the game. But it's like, once you find a guy that, like you said, is motivated to try to make things happen, and y'all can link up and they have an understanding of what you're trying to do, and you got the capital in our champions, you got the debt side tied in. Like I mentioned earlier, it's gonna increase their likelihood of achievement, their likelihood of success in earning a commission, which in my opinion, I think is one of the biggest keys, is putting ourselves in these agents' shoes and figuring out, okay, if we can equip them with all the information that they need, it's going to help them turn over more rocks, or at least more specific rocks, and hopefully, you know, cut that time down, less scenic routes and more straight to, you know, finding good deals, I guess. So I just wanted to hear how that, you know, relationship was going, because it just doesn't happen overnight, and you're not always gonna, you know, you're not gonna meet your bride maybe on the very first date, you know, on the first weekend in college. It could happen, but it's most likely not gonna happen, you know, that kind of thing. So good stuff. Okay. All right. Anybody else thoughts or questions before we start to wrap up?
Yeah, I got a quick question right quick.
Okay.
I know you know a little bit about this, and I think we've spoken about this before, but this property that I'm looking at, the guy bought it in 2022 and basically just bought it as a fix and flip and everything. And whenever he did this, he did not add a sprinkler system, which I thought was kind of concerning. But the broker today said that they didn't need a sprinkler system. But me and my broker, we thought it did. And so, do you know a little bit about the codes and everything? It's in the west side of Birmingham, and it's 25,000 square foot.
Yeah, so there's two answers to that. The first answer is going to be it's going to be tenant specific. So if you have a tenant that is, and I want to believe that it's unique, the code is unique to each municipality as well. Because I've got a building that is just under 10,000 feet, and I was not required to sprinkle the building.
Okay.
I could, and I don't know your exact location, but maybe in that particular code they might require the sprinkle. But I in my opinion, or in my understanding, because I bought a building that's 13,000 feet and I'm not required to sprinkle it because I believe that it's tenant specific. If someone's going to lease the building and they're going to be painting something or flammable, then you might have to do it. But I'm not that might be a good question to have though. Just like I can find that answer. Let's just do that. That was my understanding though.
Yeah. I mean, the tenant is going to be a plumbing company, so I mean, I wouldn't see a need for it. But I just figured with him, replacing the roof and all kinds of interior, I figured, with whatever kind of permit they had to have to do all this renovation, I figured that they couldn't pass, if they didn't have a sprinkler system, but they did. So, I mean, maybe they don't have to have one.
Well, I can figure that out. I mean, that's a good question. I mean, that's probably a quick answer that I can get you to, and I could,
Yeah.
I'll put that up on school. I'll shoot you a text when I find out, but I'll also put that answer up on school because, when you're finding spaces and good sites like that, that question will come up again. So I can make sure I get that to everybody.
Okay.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. All right. Anyone else? Anybody else? Anything else on their mind?
Do you have any updates on your possible development project?
I do have an update on that, and that project is dead in the water.
Oh,
It is. I know. I was really pumped about it too. We were under contract and everything, and for I think it was 2.5 million, and then I already had a term sheet from my bank. I think I told everyone I was actually going to do an interest rate swap on that for the debt to reduce the price. But what happened was we went to go sign this lease with the tenant for like a 15-year net lease, and he basically just got cold feet. He was from Kazakhstan, if y'all remember, like seeing all the stuff about it, and he wanted to do he needed a 6 month. It was like he wanted a 6 month out clause where he could just get out whenever he wanted. And he did not want rent increases for 15 years.
It would leave you holding. He would leave you holding the property with no big tenants to come back in after him, basically.
I mean, yeah, it was really interesting because I sat down across them and I was like, look, and I felt bad honestly for the sellers because they were in the room too. And he's like, yeah, we don't want to do this, we don't want this, we don't want this. And I was like, all right, well, then we're just way too far apart. You can't ask for all of these things. Now I'll buy the building from you for $1 million and I'll take on that risk. I'm not taking it for, 2.5 million and then also buying the land for $1 million with that type of risk. I kind of joked, but I was like, all right, if you want 6 months out, I want a 4-week out clause where I can just kick you out anytime I want. And you got to vacate in 4 weeks, He's like, well, I don't know. I'm like, yeah, then what you're asking is just ridiculous, So I went back and I felt bad because I spoke with the seller after we left the meeting, and he's like, dude, he's like wanting to it doesn't matter, but he's a super nice guy too. And he's like, man, I'm really sorry about that. And I was like, it doesn't bother me. I really it just stinks. It just stinks that the seller just blew this, or the tenant just blew the whole deal up. So, I I just said, hey man, I'm out unless you can get that lease to be signed. But the most important thing for the whole thing was I no longer trusted that guy. I no longer
A
trusted.
tenant?
I don't trust the tenant anymore. Yeah.
Hmm.
And so I was like, man, I understand he's from across the world and they may be trying to negotiate everything, but I was like, when we've already agreed to a letter of intent, like we were there to sign the lease. And then he came up with like these 4 things that he needed. And I was like, man, we were real close to getting this deal done. Like I had already ordered an Alta survey on the land, like was going to pay $6,000 to just get the survey, like to do everything.
He threw you a
And-
curveball.
Yeah, he threw me a curveball and I was like, man, this sucks because I'm out now. And so, but you know what? You never know. You never know what can happen, right? Like I haven't spoken with that guy in months since we closed, but who's to say that he doesn't come back and say, hey, yeah, we'll reduce our price if you do this deal and we might come together, make a new
Sure.
offer. But no, I appreciate you asking, but yeah, that would have been a cool one to do and develop an actual site and everything. But sometimes it just doesn't work out the
Yeah.
way it's supposed to work out, So
Cool.
cool.
Or
Yeah.
not cool. But
Well, hey, it's like we said, it's you go on a date your freshman year of college, you probably not going to marry that girl, whatever. Go to the next one. So how good.
Nolan, I've got a question. I know I jumped the gun last week, I guess it was, or week before, and I sent over I sent over a property that's in my backyard here, and it does check 4 of the boxes. I don't know because I haven't talked to the listing broker or anything. I don't know. Well, I do know it's not leased, but it's 30 some odd thousand square feet. Anyway, I'm just wondering where that went. If that's something that still like is on your desk, what is that? Because I think it's got possibilities. It's a great building and it's right on Interstate 35, which is like.
Well, I wouldn't say you're jumping the building or you're jumping the gun at all. I think, and that's another thing as I'm working this, our blueprint, I'm going to make the video to where it's, hey, when you have a deal, this is kind of the protocol as to how, because here's the kicker. When I'm sent I'm looking at, I don't know, 50 deals a week. Because it's awesome because everyone's like ripping and going. It's great. I've got to have a system in order for me to value a building and a property without even being on the ground, right? So that's why we created that request for financing template with all those pieces to the pie.
Okay.
So when I see that and you send me the pro forma, you send me that filled out request for financing sheet, it's going to allow me to have such a better global comprehension of the deal versus just, looking at a pro forma and saying it's 30,000 feet and it's vacant. Like for me, it's not enough information to decide yay or nay. And that's why,
Okay.
if it's a vacant, that's when the 7% calculator comes in, you work all the numbers, you send all that to me. That gives me the most information. Like I was showing you that proposal for finance to the banks. I try and give if you can give me more information, it allows me to be like, hey, Cal, man, this might be good. Let's get on a call this afternoon and discuss this, versus just, again, a pro forma and with that just numbers on a screen. It's hard for me to, and I don't think that's fair to you, right? I don't think it's fair to you to spend time looking at something and then sending me, working on a pro forma and then me not having any information to or feedback to give you, or us to have an actual good conversation and decide on a deal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Because in the back of my mind, I don't know enough, but I do know. But the one thing that sticks with me is, man, is this deal going to be gone? And I'm going to be looking back, going, golly, that one got, I got bias. But
Yeah.
I get it.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. All right, y'all. Well, I appreciate it. I have another call coming up here. But I appreciate everybody getting on today. Anything else is on your mind, reach out to Zane and I. Give us a shout, whatever it is. I'll be putting this replay back up on school probably tomorrow. And then any questions in the meantime, holler at us. Let's just keep the ball rolling down the field. And if you have anything on your mind, let us know, okay?
All right. See you.
Awesome. Thanks,
Thanks.
guys, for the time. All right. See you guys next week. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.